As we talk about the reopening of China, to what point are we also looking at a diversification away from the mainland market that could have an impact?
Yeah. Well, again, I agree with what's been discussed here on China. It's hard to predict, but we don't expect the growth in China to be back to its pre-pandemic levels, right? So how it will impact the rest of the world, especially ASEAN in Southeast Asia and Asia, East Asia especially, is really dependent on how much sense of security of supply, resilience of supply chain. Right? I think you mentioned that just now. Because we do see China as a nation may focus a lot more of its investment inward, right? Using public sector investment rather than private sector investment. I must admit, our studies show that for the region, we are net beneficiary of what's is happening today. They talk about geopolitics, as there's reshoring and friendshoring, and ASEAN as a neutral bloc. In the short term, is a net beneficiary, but of course in the long term, we know that restrictions to trade, limitation to trade will result in higher prices of goods, and then at the end of the day, people, the consumer, will be the one that is going to pay the price. So for China, in particular, how we are looking at it is to ensure that in all issues, engagement is key, right? So the engagement at the various levels with China and the region is going to help the growth and the trade in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia.
Do we need to just rethink the significance of the reopening of China this time around?
Well, China is our third trade partner for the port of Antwerp-Bruges. And as we say, it's a big part of Europe, count on China. And we export much more from the port of Antwerp to China than we import. So luckily for us in Europe, we still produce valuable things that the world wants to have. And amongst them, China. So it's important to have them back on board, but it will be difficult to manage the relationship for the European continent between China and the United States, and especially on technological discussions. And globalization works, and I think the world needs globalization if there is trust between all the most important players, and that's what we miss for the time being. And hopefully, the economic blocs like the United States, Europe, and China will find a way to rebuild trust. It's in the interest of everyone. Europe decided over the last decade to ask China to become the factory of the world. So we need China for our daily lives. So if we keep that decision, well, we will have to find a way to work again in a trustful way with China.